Good morning, afternoon or evening, ladies and gentlemen, Allincrypto here, and welcome back, guys, on this fantastic Thursday for what is going to be nothing short of another jam-packed daily market update. And we've got a variety of things to cover. The first thing I'm going to start on is with some things that have came out of the Trump administration and the potential for them to impose no taxes for earners below $150,000 within the US. I can only but pray that something like that happens to us in the UK. And the reason that I bring this up, there's also comments being made by Warren Buffett that actually says President Trump is making the, quote, best financial decisions for America in the last 50 years. So the reason that I bring this up is there's a lot of uncertainty right now that we'll look at. We're going to look at some economic data. We had CPIs yesterday and PPIs today, both showing lower than expected inflation. And actually economic data, and this was my Patreons, we looked at PMIs, CPIs, GDPs, ADPs, non-farms. We looked at a whole host of economic data. And actually, when you look at it, the fears of... Ask yourself this question. Why do you think there's a recession and a market crash coming? Is it just because there's uncertainty around Trump's policies? Which the reason we're starting on this is for me to essentially say I'm a lot more optimistic on Trumponomics than many people perhaps are. Yes, there's uncertainty, but I think there's a resolve to it. And I think if you look at where monetary policy is, there's an unwinding of that in terms of its tightness to take place. And if you look at what's happened with Europe, it's done very well. So this is really the reason we're going to start on that. Then we're going to get into some crypto news, some insane crypto news. I think the Ripple case is going to be up in a matter of weeks. I truly, truly do. Eleanor Tourette reported on this, did a whole video on it yesterday, or covered it in a longer XRP video yesterday. I think this case is going to be up. You've got the Sunshine Act taking place today with the SEC where they're going to discuss these matters. Then there's insane news that Trump family is essentially looking to acquire a stake in Binance. We'll talk about the BNB token and, show you some sort of bullish technical patterns for it. And this could be the fundamental reason why. We'll talk about that economic data. Then we're going to finish things off with the markets. Markets still really suffering under the weight of the S&P 500. We're going to be normalizing that by looking at the average pullback the S&P 500 has had thus far in its bull market. Meanwhile, you've got the same bears pushing the narrative of complete chaos and destruction throughout the entirety of what's been really good markets, even for altcoins broadly, but they've not quite, they've been a kind of microcosm in the macro direction that we've got really right for risk assets. The bears have been saying for the same thing every single pullback, and every time they've been wrong. My bet is they're going to be wrong again today. And actually, I don't see a recession. Looking at economic data, I truly don't. And I see a great time ahead of us as investors. So let's get into it all. Now, this was on Twitter earlier today. It says, Trump proposes no tax for earners below $150,000. President Trump is considering a new tax policy where individuals earning less than $150,000 annually might not have to pay taxes. According to the US Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick, we'll look at the video of that, this proposal is part of a broader discussion on fiscal strategies as the 2017 tax cut face expiration. I think we're following 2017's playbook in regards to what's going to happen with the dollar. It already is. And risk assets. They're going to do well under that weaker dollar and monetary policy coming down. In my opinion, I am far more optimistic, and we've been very vocal. Even when the election went on, I am more of, if you gave me a choice between Camilla and Trump, we said we think Trump's going to do better for Americans. Now, we stick our neck on the line by saying things like that because it essentially cuts us off to a lot of people that would have voted in the opposite fashion. And thank God you did. Imagine how boring the world would be if we all agreed with one another. So just because I think Trump is better for America and I'm a lot more optimistic doesn't mean that, if you have an opposing opinion, we think anything less of you. In fact, I'm over the moon that people think differently. Otherwise, we'd have a very boring world. Do we want to be like everybody else? I don't think so. So this is interesting. He says the policies aims to shift taxation burdens from international revenue to external sources, like a memberships fee from other countries trading with the US. He is running the country like a business. And there's pros and cons to this. A lot of people, it's either black or it's white. There's grey a lot of time. And I think, people need to try and find that grey area and weigh up the pros and cons. But let's listen to where this came from. This was obviously from Lutnick, who was on CNBC News 24/7, so there's nothing official on this. But the reason I wanted to bring this up, and we'll look at what Warren Buffett had to say, is because I'm far more bullish on Trump and his economy than I think many people are right now. And I don't see the reasons to be concerned with the economy broadly. Yes, we know it's a Ponzi scheme. We know that. But whilst the emperor's walking around believing he has clothes on, he has clothes on. But I don't see the cause for concern. I think markets are actually going to do very well. That's my forecast. We've been writing it thus far since we got back into the markets in 2023. I believe we're going to continue to be right. Let's play this clip of Howard Lutnick.
How about no tax on tips? How about no tax on overtime? How about no Social Security? How about all those things? These are the kind of thoughts that will change America. I know what his goal is. No tax for anybody who makes less than $150,000 a year. That's his goal. And that's what I'm working for.
Wouldn't that be great? I wish our government would look to do something like that. There was a party that proposed no tax up to £20,000 pounds here in the UK. But I think people largely just moved over that and essentially, looked at other issues that were being propagated. I think Trump is likely going to suffer from the kind of global elitist order or the global sort of agenda. And it's interesting to see how, with all this uncertainty, of course, the markets have done what they've done. We're going to look at that in a second because I think this is just a normal pullback. I am optimistic, guys, as hell, actually. And this is what Warren Buffett had to say. Breaking. Warren Buffett says President Trump is making the best financial decisions for America in 50 years. Wow. Unbelievable. We will see. Again, there's grey. Not everything's good. Not everything's bad. Let's talk about some huge news coming out of the SEC and Ripple case. So the SEC Ripple case nears end. Settlement term discussed. The US Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, and Ripple Labs are in the process of concluding their long-standing legal dispute. According to multiple sources, negotiations are ongoing, focusing primarily on the term related to the $125 million fine and the penalty ban on the sale of XRP to institutions. I think that's one of the main things that because they've got a lot of XRP, right? There's a lot of money they can make. They have a vested interest in XRP's price being higher. While there is anticipation for a settlement, the specifics on the agreement remain unsolved. There is the Sunshine Act taking place 13th of March, which is today. This is from Eleanor Tourette. She apparently spoke to two sources well-placed that say it's going to conclude soon and that there's negotiations taking on or going on in regards to a lot of what Torres had essentially ruled. So we'll see. I do think there's going to be a result of this. XRP and XLM, two of my biggest holdings, making really good moves. We're still hundreds of % up on these. Let's talk about this from the Wall Street Journal. Trump family has held deal talks with Binance following exchange's guilty plea. Discussions for a stake in Binance US's arm come as founder CZ has pushed for administration to pardon him for his 2023 plea deal or guilty plea. Very interesting. I'm actually bullish on BNB. This is at all-time highs. This is done a lot better than most altcoins, recovered a lot better than most altcoins. This is going to push higher. We've got that $2,674 price prediction. And certainly if the likes of Trump got behind it, and we'll address the market action in just a second, you're seeing a lot of red to the right of my screen here, which is very interesting. There's been a lot of economic data. Again, talking about the economy is in better standing, I think. Whether it really is, certainly the data's saying it is. And you've got to take that at face value. If you look at core PPIs that just came out today, they have now dropped significantly. So this is producer price inflation. And over 5 years, they're pretty stable. Actually, we're back at sort of March 2020 levels. Water finds its level. And this, of course, was the inflation data that came out. We did say 2.8. Now they're expecting 2.5 in the next one. This is going to sort of, we're back at sort of March 2020 levels. Thereabouts. We're slightly elevated, but I do think, it's thereabouts. Despite this, there's been no change to the rate cut that they are going to do in 8 days, or 6 days, sorry. However, you are going to get interest rates coming down. And look at what's happening with the European stock market right now. It's doing very well. Look at what's happening with housing demand in certain areas. Central banks are the great manipulators of prices for everything, essentially, because they control money and its supply. And in regards to all this uncertainty and sort of things going on, I actually just think this is a normal pullback for the S&P 500. You've had plenty of these thus far. The first one was 8% in its recent uptrend, or the uptrend it's been in. Then we had a 9.25% one, a 10% one, a 6.9% one, a 9.9% one. And at the peak of this pullback, it was 9.6%. This could very easily recover, and you could see that continuation. This ran our inverse head and shoulders target. We do have broader targets for it. And ultimately, when it comes to Bitcoin, we all know the score. We all know the score. There is the scope, and we did close that gap for the price potentially coming a little lower, as there always is. But I ultimately think this is in a great uptrend and going to see continuation. And if you look at the kind of pullbacks Bitcoin's had thus far, this is still within the realms of a normal one. It's quite hard to convince people that the kind of price movements we're seeing in the crypto space are normal. Really, the cryptocurrency space right now just suffering from the S&P 500 and what it's doing. And that's on the back end of all the uncertainty, which we said at the start of the video, we were a lot more hopeful than many are out there on kind of Trump's economic plan. There's going to be hurdles. Change markets typically, until it's being digested, don't enjoy change, but they actually have a lot of room to essentially react to any negativity with where monetary policy currently is. And I think there's a bigger plan at play here. That's it from me, guys. I'm going to love and leave each and every one of you. Let's keep our eyes on the Ripple case. It's going to have huge ramifications. Stellar Ripple doing quite well today. Let's keep our eye on economic stats like the ones we've just seen. And certainly technically look for this to be outside the realms of a normal pullback for the stock market and thus the cryptocurrency space and risk generally. Right now, despite everything, this is still a normal pullback that we've endured since 2023 on multiple occasions. And I do believe we will have a similar resound in regards to how it's resolved. That's it from me, guys. I'm going to love and leave you. Thanks for watching. See you all in the next one.